conservatism and constitutionalism, because if you say that you legalize freedom of choice, they say, oh, that means you support and condone. And that is not the case. Freedom permits these these voluntary choices. In economics, it's the same thing. For some reason, about 100 years ago, this country came to the notion of personal liberty was separate from economic liberty. And it's not the case. It's all in the one. If you believe in personal liberty and allowing people to lead their own lives, then economically it is the same thing. Just because I allow you to, I want to let you have your own life, I want you to have the extent of your life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and I want you to have incentives to earn and take care of yourself, but I want you to keep the fruits of your labor. And that is the greatest incentive in the world. Now, if we had that, there'd be a few minor changes that we would have to make in Washington, like repeal the 16th and get rid of the IRS. Based on a very evil notion. It's based on the fact that the government owns our lives. Even if the tax is only 1% or 2% or 3%, it says the government owns 100% and they allow you to keep a certain percent. That cannot stand in a free society. Another issue that demonstrates the government owning lives comes with the military draft. The military draft is anti-liberty. If they need more soldiers to fight wars that are undeclared and unnecessary, if they need the troops, then they will have to call up a certain group of individuals. Today they're talking about that again. Today they're talking about bombing Iran. That means the spreading of the war. That is why there's a lot at stake. And also I think that is the reason that the young people are rallying to the cause of liberty and the limitation of government power by the Constitution. We're getting a lot more questions about the economy. One of the big questions tonight in the debate was, the people say they're having trouble financially, they're worried, they have concern, but the government statistics tell everybody everything is perfect, and they wonder why the difference. Well, did you ever know that governments tend to be deceitful and not tell us the truth about what's going on? But we are having trouble. And this state is having trouble. And it's related to what our federal government does. Now, most people come and they say, well, what is your policy to help the people of Michigan? Well, it's the same policy for everybody. You need more freedom. You need less taxation, less regulations. You need a better economic system. But this today, the fact that some people are falling through the cracks, is related to the monetary system. People can work 2 jobs, their incomes can go up, but their income actually in real terms goes down. Real income has been going down for 7 years right now. You cannot solve that problem without looking at the monetary issue. It's called monetary debasement. It's debasing the currency. And how do they do it? Very simple. They just print it. We need to prohibit the printing of money. We need to deal with the Federal Reserve System. This country knew a whole lot about money. They knew about the runaway inflation of the continental dollar, and they said, therefore, we were not to emit bills of credit, which was paper money, and only gold and silver should be legal tender. There are a lot of reasons for that. One, it's immoral to counterfeit. 2, you shouldn't do it because it's unconstitutional. 3, it's very, very bad for the economy. But number 4, one of the worst reasons why they have a paper money system is it supports the growth of government, because when you don't have to tax or borrow money, then they resort to printing the money. It's very, very deceitful. It is literally a tax. So if they want to fight a war or pass out benefits so the politicians get reelected, They just print up the money, and they get initial benefits from it, but ultimately it leads to the crisis that we're facing today. We are on the verge of a dollar crisis. The dollar is very, very weak on international exchange markets. It's going to get a lot weaker, and your generation will have to do something about it. I am going to do my part. I have been talking about monetary policy for 30 years, and this is the first time in any presidential campaign in 100 years where the monetary issue has come up, and it's something that we have to deal with. We have to have honesty in money, because that will put honesty on the politician who can't spend money they don't have. Of what happens with runaway inflation. It destroys the middle class. Just read monetary history, whether it's Germany or Central America or Mexico or wherever. It transfers wealth from the middle class to the wealthy. And today, the statistics coming out of Wall Street and coming out of Washington paints a rosy picture. At the same time, though, the people on the other end are having a tough time. There are more billionaires in the country today than ever before, and that has to do with the monetary system. And there's nothing wrong with becoming very, very rich in a free society. But when they get rich from the help of the government, if they become very wealthy because they belong to the banking system, or they get very wealthy because they belong to the military-industrial complex, there's something we ought to say about that. But this idea about how freedom brings people together, it is non-confrontational, where the opposite system, whether you have runaway welfareism or socialism, the government takes everything and then they pass it out under their conditions. And when productivity goes down, the pie shrinks and the people become more aggressive. So they are flocking to Washington. Flocking not for freedom. You think the average businessman comes to Washington for more freedom and the Constitution? No, they come for contracts. They want to sell helicopters. They want to make bombs, and they want to inflate. They want to bail out their financial bubbles. All these kind of things are designed to help a special class of people. A free society protects no one group. It protects individuals. All individuals. Our rights do not come to us because we belong to a group. It doesn't come to us because there's a gay group, a women's group, or a minority group, or whatever. Everybody should be treated equally because they're an individual. It should truly be a colorblind society. The threat of this war spreading, the threat of financial crisis, the threat of the dollar collapsing. There are a lot of concerns, and yet, really, they're not that difficult. I see these problems as being just a consequence of us getting lazy about studying and understanding how freedom works, loss of confidence that freedom really is the solution to so many of our problems, becoming dependent on the government and using the government. But today, all these problems can be looked on as a benefit to us because it's calling attention to the very, very serious problems that we have and answering questions on what should we do. And to start with, all we really need to do is recognize that our problems came because we didn't follow the Constitution. Why not just follow the Constitution? We wouldn't have runaway welfareism and all these deficits. We would be releasing the creative energy of each and every individual. And this is what we want, the creative energy. We don't need a government that thinks it can legislate virtue. That is impossible. It can't legislate equality and economics either. And it cannot force our democratic and Republican type principles, our freedom principles, on anybody around the world. It just doesn't work.